So you're sure that you want to get started investing in property, but you're not sure exactly where to go and how to start, right? Well, today I'm going to show you two different strategies in property that you can start implementing today, if not tomorrow, right? It's going to be the flipping strategy of property and the rentals. My name is Nhlakanipho and welcome to my financial education channel. And here we speak about everything property related, and here and there I speak about investing in the stock market, right? But this specific video is going to be speaking about rental property versus flipping property. Now, always remember that none of my videos are financial advice. If you are looking for a financial advisor, I recommend that you seek a financial advisor. This video is purely for educational purposes, right? With that being said, let me take a step back and explain what exactly is a flip. The flip that I'm speaking about is when you buy a property below market value because it's not in a great condition, and then you fix the property up and then you sell it for a large chunk of profit. And then a rental is the traditional method of investing in property that we know. When you purchase a property and you put in tenants, or you purchase the property, you fix it up a little bit, and then you put in tenants that are gonna rent out on your property. Either you manage it or a rental agent manages it for you. That's completely up to you. So in this video, I'm gonna break down to you the advantages and disadvantages of doing a house flip, and advantages of disadvantages of the rental property, and I'm actually going to go into an example. Now, also my example doesn't include things like tax and all of that, so just bear that in mind, okay? Now, starting with the house flip, right? The advantages of a house flip is that you can make big chunks of money. Like, you can really make big chunks of money, 100,000 rand, 150,000, 200,000 rands on a single transaction. These chunks of profits also come with the associated risk as well, because you cannot always guarantee the amount of money that you can sell the property for. So if you got it for 400,000 and you're predicting you can sell it for 600,000, and then the market takes a dip or COVID-19 happens and then you're unable to sell it for the price at which you had hoped to sell it, do you then see that the potential profits that you could make are not as great as you potentially had originally estimated? Now, this is not to say it's always going to happen. It is an anomaly to have a situation like COVID-19, which is why flipping of property is really a good strategy in property. I personally do it, and I do know that a lot of other people do it as well. One thing to note about flipping property is that it does become a bit of a headache. So you do need people to help you out. You can't do all the work yourself. If the house needs to be fixed, it needs to be painted, the cupboards, you need to replace maybe the tiles, you need to redo something in the house. All of that is a lot of admin, and it's a very tedious task to manage all of that. Well, the great news is that you can always get someone who's a property manager to manage that process, obviously for a fee, so that you can sit back and just manage the property manager to make sure that the everything is going according to plan and according to the timelines in which you had originally wanted them to go by. But one thing I'll mention is it is time consuming if you're going to be doing it yourself, and it is a bit of a headache, but it's also very exciting to see a house that is in a horrible condition, and then you fix it up and you sell it to a family that can actually now live in it, and it's in a livable condition. I believe that there is a sense of satisfaction that you get more than just the large chunk of profit that you'll make, but there is more than just the profit side to flipping property. There's also that satisfaction of providing a home to a family, providing some sort of accommodation to students or whatever the case may be, but you're providing quality accommodation to someone else who will be purchasing this property. Another thing with flipping property is that it will significantly increase your business skills, because you need to manage people, you need to manage the contractors, you need to manage the property manager if you have one, and if you're doing it yourself, you constantly need to be aware of all the costs that are associated with the materials that are being purchased, making sure that everything is within budget, making sure that everything is along the timelines. So in terms of operations, you do become someone who is very efficient over time, and also in terms of the financials, you start looking at the small amounts of money. Unlike maybe when you're renting out a property, you just sit back and the rent comes in and you don't really do much, right? So flipping property really does create a lot of profit. It also helps you to generate better business skills, and it also helps you to just in general meet more people, because you'll be changing sometimes contractors if you feel like the experience that you received with this contract is not great, so you'll maybe shift to someone else, maybe you'll have another agent, and all that experience you'll meet, and all that experience, that you'll be having is something that you can't take away, something that you can't learn on a book. It's something that you actually have to learn on the ground, and those business skills that you get are something you can implement into any other business venture you choose to go into. Now, the renting of property. Rentals are great because the prediction on the cash flow that you'll be getting on a monthly basis is pretty much certain, unless something goes wrong with your tenant. But the cash flow that you'll be getting on a monthly basis, even though it's not as great, but it definitely is predictable. You can know that, okay, every month I'm getting 6,000 rands. Every month this is my profit. Every month these are my expenses. It's pretty much very predictable. It's pretty boring, you could say, as well. But also, one thing to note about being a landlord is that your tenants can trash the apartments. These are some of the risks that are associated with owning a rentals, that your tenants can trash the apartments, and sometimes they can trash it to the value bigger than the deposit that you have. Then you have a big problem. Your tenants can up and leave and not pay rent. You see, in these difficult times right now, some people cannot afford to pay rent. So these are problems that you will be facing as a landlord over the period of time in which you'll be owning the property. But what's also great is that you will be benefiting from the monthly cash flow. You'll be benefiting hopefully from capital appreciation as well. And if you're smart, you're able to leverage all the equity that you have in your property into purchasing more properties, which will gain capital appreciation and cash flow as well. So it really is a good strategy as well. I can't tell you which strategy to go for, but what I can say is make the best decision for you. And speaking about the best decision for you, let's jump right into an example so that you can see the exact numbers in terms of what would it look like if you were to purchase a property and rent it out versus if you were to purchase it, fix it up and flip it. Now, the numbers I'm going to be using are numbers that I've assumed. They're very realistic numbers, and they're numbers that I've seen, that I've also personally experienced, right? So let's start with the flip, right? The example that I'm going to be making, the spreadsheet, you can find it in the description below. You can just click on it and download it if you want to make reference to the numbers that I'm referring to. It's going to be in an Excel spreadsheet that you can easily navigate, and you can easily understand the numbers that I'm going to be mentioning right now, right? So let's assume you're purchasing a property for 400,000 rands. You've negotiated the price because it's in a bad condition, and you've come to 400,000 rands. And you get a bond financing, then the bond cost would be about 13,800 with the transfer costs about 14,700 rand, and then you're all in for about 428,500 rands. If you want to know how I got these numbers, I got them from Songezo's website, Songezo Inc. You can just look him up in one of the lives that I did, also in my YouTube channel. It was on my Instagram, so on his website they have a calculator that helps you easily calculate the transfer cost that you're going to be paying on a property you're purchasing and the bond costs as well. So head over to his website. I think it's songsinc.co.za. Right, so now you're all in at a cost of 428,000 rand, 428,500 rand. That's your total cost of purchasing the property. Once you own the property, you're now going to have to do a rehab on the property and fix it up, fix up the tiles, redo the paint, whatever it is that is the problem with the property. You come in and you fix the problem. Now let's assume that the rehab cost would cost you about 80,000 rands, including the labor, the materials and everything, all in for 80,000 rands. And then you have holding costs, which would be the cost of you actually holding the property while you're fixing it and while you're trying to sell it. I'm assuming for 4 months, 1 month for the rehab and 3 months for you to try sell the property, right? So if the rates and taxes are 350 rands per month, that's 350 times 4, and the bond repayment on that, assuming that you got a prime plus 1, which at this moment would be 8%, then your repayments to the bank would be 3,350. That brings you to a total of 94,800 in terms of the holding costs plus the rehab costs. Once you now have fixed up the property and it looks great. You fixed up all the windows that were broken and everything that was wrong with the property. Now you need to start preparing to sell the property. So I know I'm throwing around a lot of numbers, so if you do feel more comfortable to follow on the spreadsheet, do go and click the description, the link in the description down below, download it, download the working paper that I have there, and then come back and follow on the video as I speak. It's also very difficult for me to remember all these numbers, so I think I'm actually gonna do the exact same thing. So now you're all in at a purchase price, plus all the costs that included is 428,500. Your rehab cost was 800,000 rands. Your holding costs of the rates and taxes, plus the bond repayment, all those costs all included bring you to 94,800 rands. So the total cost of you fixing up this property and actually holding it is now 523,300 rands. This is the cost of purchasing it, fixing it up, and holding it. Holding it for the period of 4 months that we've assumed, 1 month for the rehab and 3 months for you to get the property sold. Right after that, what you're going to do is you're going to list the property. You list the properties, let's say for 670,000 rands. So the agents will be marketing the property, people will be viewing the property, it looks amazing. Eventually you get an offer. You get an offer at a bit lower price than what you had anticipated, which is 630,000 rands. This is realistic. People do negotiate prices, and if you're not negotiating prices when you're purchasing property, that means you're making a great big mistake, right? So make sure you always negotiate, and chances are they're going to negotiate with you as well. If they do not negotiate, then it's even better, but in this example, let's assume that there was a negotiation. Once you've sold the property for 630,000 rands, assuming you're paying the agent a commission of 6% on the sales price, that agent commission will be 37,800 rand. Now, with the agent commission taken into account, you're going to have a net selling price of 592,200 rands. That's basically what you sold the property for once you've deducted the agency fees. Now, let's calculate what your actual return and what your profit is in this regard. It's going to be a total profit of 106,700. If you look at the formula in the worksheet that I have, it clearly shows exactly how I received that 106,700. It would be the cost of the product, it would be the net selling price of the property less the total cost that we had mentioned before of being 523,300. The return is then 106,700, and your investments, your total actual investment that you put in, now excluding the bank's money and all of that, the money that you actually put into the project would have been 123,300 rands. So where you get this 123,000 is completely up to you. You might have borrowed it from a bank somewhere else. You might have borrowed it from a friend. You might have gone 50-50 with another investor. Either way, your total investment would be 123,000. And we've calculated your return on investment. I think this is the most exciting part about flipping property. It is 86,000. It is 86.5%. I nearly said 86,000. So it's 86%. Where in the world would you get an 86% return on your investments? There's slim to none that will give you that. But also remember, the chances of you selling the property at 630,000 will be dependent on whether you did your proper due diligence or not. If you're aiming to sell the property for 670, 630, meanwhile other properties are selling for 500, do you see that it's not going to work? So you need to get a significant discount on the property that you're purchasing so that you're able to sell it at least market value or even below market value, so that you can get as quick as possible sale and you don't have these holding costs, and you can get the money in your bank account as soon as possible. That's what matters when you're flipping property. It's the speed in which you do things and also the large chunks of profit that you'll be making. Now let's use the exact same example and let's analyze a rental property. Now for the rental property, let's assume the exact same numbers and let's jump right into it. So you purchased it for 400,000, the transfer costs are 14,700, the bond costs are 13,800, and your total purchase price is 428,500 rands. Now remember, the rehab will still be 80,000 rands, but the difference now is your holding costs. Your holding costs will be different because you're not trying to sell the property. So I'm still going to assume you taking 1 month to fix the property up, and then I'll assume an additional month for you to try find a tenant. So that's 2 months of holding costs, which are 700 Rand for the rates and taxes at 350 per month, and also 6,700 for the bond cost for those 2 months, right? Bringing your total cost, everything combined, to 515,900, as compared to when you were flipping the property, it was 523,300, sorry. So your total cost is then less if you are renting the property out, because your holding cost will be less. But also remember, your profits per year will also be less. Let's actually look at the numbers. So your rental income, if it's a 2-bedroom house, assuming it's a 2-bedroom house and you're renting out each room on a room by room basis, that's 3,000 Rands coming in from each room, bringing you a rental income of 6,000 Rands. And then you'll have expenses of your bond, which is 3,350, the rates and taxes of 350, a vacancy cost, which is a fictitious cost, which is basically saying whenever I don't have a tenant, I still want to have some money saved aside that is going to help me to pay for the vacancy. So pay for the costs that are associated with me owning this property during the vacancy period. And the vacancy period, you never know how long it's going to be. So let's just take a 10% vacancy, which will mean you're saving 600 Rands every month from the rental income and putting it aside just in case you don't have a tenant. And then also repairs and maintenance, because over time you're going to need to repair this property, and let's assume another 600 Rand for repairs and maintenance, bringing your total cost to 4,900, and that's after all that's basically all the costs all included, and then your income is 6,000 Rands. That brings you a monthly profit of what? Yes, it brings you a monthly profit of 1,100 Rands every single month, and on a yearly basis it will be 13,200. So that 13,200 Rands as an annual profit, which is your return. If you're calculating the return on investment, it will be the 13,200 over the 87,400, which was your initial investment, giving you a return on investment of 15%. Now you have a return on investment of 15% versus the return on investment when you had it on the other side of 86%. So which one is better, right? Right now it might look like flipping property strategy is better. Mind you, I have not included any taxes, and flipping property you do get taxed heavily as compared to if you're renting out property, but that's not what this video is about. I'm not going to dig deep into that. I'm just going to break down a bit more on the rental side. What exactly is the benefit then of having a rental? So you have this 15% return on your property, and don't forget there's this thing called capital appreciation. So in my example, in the example that I had made with the flipping of the property, the market value of the property where we were selling it for 630,000 Rands, right? So today the property would be worth 630,000 Rands. Let's assume that the property capital appreciation over the next 10 years is at 3.5%. If it's at 3.5%, if we do the maths, that means in 10 years time, the property will be worth roughly 889,000 Rands. So let's just round off and say 890,000 Rands. And if you decide to sell it at that date with the agency fees of 53,400 at 6% of the selling price, which would be 890 times 6%. If you do want to follow, you can follow again in the worksheet that I have linked in the bio, in the description below. So do go and check that out as well if you want to follow with me in terms of all the numbers. So now you're selling the property 10 years later for 890,000 Rands, and the total cost for you to own this property was 515,000 Rand, bringing you a total profit on sale of 320,000 Rand 700. Now let's not even count the fact that over the years you've been paying down the loan balance, so you actually have more money in your pocket. Let's just look at the pure profit. The pure profit you'll be making in 10 years time is 320,000 Rands, as compared to if you're making the profit on the flip, which would be 106,000 Rands today. So what do you prefer? 106,000 Rands today, or do you prefer to have 320,000 Rands in 10 years time? But also remember, over the years, you've also been receiving cash flow, passive income on a monthly basis. And let's actually include that money that you've been receiving. Over the 10 years, assuming you're increasing rentals by 5% every single year, that means the total cash flow profit that you've made just from rentals is 166,000 rands. So do you see that you've made 166,000 rands from purely renting the property out, and on sale 10 years later, you made 320,000 rands. That brings your total profits to 486,000 rands. So which one is better now? Do you choose to rent out a property and make 486,000 rands over the next 10 years? Or would you prefer to flip a property today and make 106,000 rands today? So that really is dependent on you as an individual. I can't tell you what to do. I can't really coach you and say, this is better than that. It really is dependent on whether you want the money today or you don't mind waiting for it and having the money over time. But one thing I can guarantee you is rentals are something that is wealth building, because in 10 years time you don't have to sell the property. You can continue renting the property out and paying off the bond over the years, and you're increasing rent over the years as well. But also flipping property on the other side might be a strategy that might be good for you right now, and you can transition later on into rentals. I explained this very well in the video that I made about my property investing strategy, which is exactly that: to flip property and then use the money that I'm flipping property with to purchase rentals. So which strategy do you think is best for you? Hit me up in the comments below, and make sure you do download this template, because this video is not going to make sense if you do not download the templates, right? So download the template and hit me up in the comments below if you have any other inputs, if you feel like I left something out or I could have said something a bit better, maybe you need a bit more clarification. Also feel free to DM me on Instagram if there are any further questions you have about flipping property or rental properties for that matter. Anyway, thank you very much for staying to the end of this video, and do subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers.